Hi everyone, welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we are going to bust some scraps with an adorable little bag. Today, we're gonna make the teeny trinket tote, and this comes to us from Carolina Little Stitches. The words are not necessary, right? Look at this little stinker. And I know, don't you all want to make a full-size version right away? When you make this bag, you're going to obsessively love it. And you're going to go, I need a full size to match this because this is adorable. So let's walk through this little baby. So you see here, we have an accent on the bottom. You have a front panel. I put my little tag there. You've got little tiny straps. Same thing on the back here. It's just adorable. You have a zipper up top because who doesn't love a zipper on their tote bag? And then when you open it up, you have a little slip pocket inside. The pattern does include instructions for a slip pocket on the outside as well. I just decided to not do that. When I was just trying out the pattern originally, I was like, I just really love this material and I didn't want to block it with anything, so I decided to leave it off. You guys, it's adorable. It's just so stinking adorable. And so you might wonder, like, okay, well, yeah, it is adorable, but what do I do with it? Like, I don't have dolls. What am I going to do with this little bag? This is actually incredibly useful. Bitty bags, tiny bags are very, very useful. You can easily add a keychain to the handles here, link it onto your bag, put your little goods in here, like your chapstick, a credit card, basic things like that. And it's just an easy way to keep track of tiny things, which who isn't trying to keep track of tiny things? So thank you so much to Carolina Little Stitches for allowing me to use your patterns on this channel. Carolina Little Stitches is the master of mini, the supplier of the very small. She's just so good at making these little patterns. If you haven't seen before, the little itty bitty backpack pattern, she thinks it's called the Bitty Bug. But it is the cutest little thing in the entire world. You have to go check out that pattern, check out that video. I mean, you're just get all your scraps out, okay? Maybe you were doing a lot of holiday sewing leading up to the holidays and you're like, all right, my sewing space is a disaster, but Christmas is done. Packages, orders, presents, it's all done. Now I've got all these scraps. What do I do with them? You just make these little babies here. You make these little babies here. And you know what? You can send them out as gifts. You can keep them and hoard them and create a little mini collection like I'm planning on doing. Or you can get started on gifts coming into the end of the school year and things like that. Because we all know these things kind of creep up on us. Take those scraps, make some of these, stock them away. Whenever you need a gift, you want to put a gift card in something. Oh my gosh, right? You just stick a gift card in this? That'd be adorable. So if you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any questions, comments, shots, leave them down below. Carolina Little Stitches at this time doesn't have a ton of patterns, but if there is a pattern on their shop that you haven't seen on my channel and you'd like me to do a video for it, please leave a comment down below. I'm gonna be totally honest, a video is not necessary. The pattern is written so absolutely perfect, and it is such an easy bag to put together. I would say this is beginner friendly, especially if you use more lightweight material. Video tutorial not necessary, but you know me, if I make a bag, I want to film it, because it is work. And I really wanted to make this bag. Alright guys, let's get started with our teeny tiny trinket tote. Alright, so for this little bag, you really just need scraps of material. So I'm not even going to show you like the full material ahead of time. It's very little. Whatever you got's gonna work here. My only suggestion is, especially for the exterior, I wouldn't use any vinyl that's super thick, either on the accent or for the full body of the bag, just because there are some very small little corners and little bits that we're sewing, and I think that you'll run into a little bit of issue if you're not used to working with thick vinyl. If you have a lot of experience with it, then go for it. But for the main body, you're going to have 2 exterior pieces and 2 lining pieces. I'm using bonded nylon for the exterior, and I'm using water-resistant canvas for the lining. Since I'm not using any quilt cotton today, I'm not using any woven interfacing. You definitely could add woven interfacing to your bonded nylon if you wanted to have a little bit more structure, but I'm just not doing that today. I'm just working with what I got. Then I have a cut for the exterior slip pocket. I did leave this off the first one. I do think it's completely optional. It is a teeny tiny pocket, but I actually thought this would be a good place to put my metal bag tag. And then I have the bottom accent. I have 2 cuts of this. This is a lightweight vinyl. It's a glittery vinyl. Again, I would go, if you're doing a vinyl, I would go with a lighter weight one. And then I also have a zipper tab with that same material. And then for the lining, I have a slip pocket for the lining. Again, totally optional. If you're like, I'm just gonna put little bits in here, I don't need pockets, then I would say leave off these 2 pieces. They are optional, but they are really cute. Okay, next up we have a small zipper tape and a zipper pull. The zipper tape needs to be at least 6 inches long. I'm using a number 5 zipper tape and zipper pull. I have a little woven bag tag that I'll put in the lining, and then I have a metal bag tag that I'll put on the exterior. I have this keychain and swivel hook combo. I'm gonna thread this onto the straps at the end so that I can clip this onto a bag. I think that will be a really cool detail. And then for my straps, I'm using 1/2 inch wide webbing. I didn't even know they made 1/2 inch wide webbing until recently, and it's super handy here. If you wanna make your own little straps, you can. It will take very little time, but since I got it, I'm gonna use it, and you're gonna need 2 cuts of this, each at least 13.5 inches long. Okay, so here's pretty much most of the other stuff. I know, it's kind of all over the place. I have my thread that's gonna go through the top needle. This is a Tex 45 weight thread. This is Wizardry Stitchery's color Dusty Rose. And then for the bobbin, I'm using a Gutermann thread. This is a polyester thread I get from Joann's. For my needle, I'm using a Microtex 8012. I have some Beacon 3-in-1 glue. This is just for the metal tag. I do like to add this to my metal tags lately. I'm gonna show you how I use it, but if you don't have a metal tag, you don't need this. Then I have a turning tool. This makes turning the bag out very easy. A standard 3-inch by 6-inch ruler. A good pair of cutting scissors. These are Kai 7230s. Then I have a healthy supply of plastic clips, a scrap of interfacing, a scrap of something to help with my metal tag. Again, not using a metal tag, you don't need it. I have a lighter to clean up loose threads, an air erasing marker for marking everything, a seam ripper, as always, because I make mistakes, and then some double-sided tape. This is 1/4 inch wide double-sided tape. So let's start with this exterior pocket, and I'm gonna be honest, this is the first time I've tried this, so we're gonna kind of play around with this idea. I'm gonna take my exterior vinyl and I'm going to lay it wrong sides together, short sides together. And I'm gonna clip along all the edges, but I don't wanna sew everything closed just yet because I do wanna use this for my metal bag tag. And the reason I like this for my metal bag tag is because it's gonna provide some support and some protection for the back side of it. So I'm gonna take this to the sewing machine and I'm only going to top stitch along the top folded edge of this little slip pocket at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so looking at the pattern, it looks like I'm gonna lose about 1/4 inch on the sides and the bottom when I attach the straps over this and the bottom accent over the bottom of this. So I am just going to pretty much center my bag tag right on this little pocket. I think I'll be okay with that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab a ruler and I'm gonna mark the very midpoint of this little square. And when you're working with metal bag tags, always make sure you check your washer and you see exactly where the prongs line up with the slits in the washer. The washer isn't always the perfect size for your metal tags. So you need to make sure you always mark the midpoint of on the washer based on where the prongs go through the slits. That just takes practice. So I'm going to center my washer over my center mark here. So just mark placement on the vinyl for the prongs of your bag tag. And then I'm gonna use a seam ripper and I'm gonna very gently cut out where those slits are. And you actually want them to be even a little bit smaller than what you marked. It's always better for it to be on the smaller side versus the larger side so that it has a nice tight fit. So then I'm gonna take my piece of stabilizer here and I'm just gonna cut it down a little bit because it's a bit big. And I'm gonna mark those same placement marks on my stabilizer. It doesn't really matter if it's centered or anything. This will be on the back side. And then I'll use my seam ripper to cut along those same slits. Okay, so now let's just get a quick test run. We're gonna insert this bag tag into those slits and just see how it looks. That looks so cute. And you'll have some wiggle room with these. If you're like, oh, it's a little slanted, you can kind of twist it. And the glue is gonna help keep it where you want it. So I'm just gonna add some of this Beacon 3-in-1 glue on the back of my tag. And it is important that this dries before you turn the bag right side out. That's the big thing. This needs to be dry before you turn the bag right side out or else you're gonna have a sticky mess. So it's good to do this at the very beginning. So I'm gonna insert this into the pocket and push it down. And then on the back, I'll add my stabilizer and then I'll add my little washer and press this down. And if you'd like to add a piece of tape over this, you can. I'm not too worried. Actually, I think I will. So I've just got like this thinner duct tape and I'll just add this over the metal on the back so it doesn't rub down the other side of the vinyl over time. All right, now let's look at the front of this. Very cute. Looks pretty straight to me. I think it looks good. Okay, you can set this to the side for a minute. Now let's grab our lining slip pocket, and you're gonna lay this right sides together, long sides together. And then just clip along that long raw edge to hold it all in place. And now sew along this long clipped edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. And once you have this sewn, you're going to gently flip the pocket so it's right side out and the seam is tucked in inside this little tube. Little turning wands are helpful for this. If you want to grab an iron and press this, that's a good idea. I'm not going to because my iron is not heated up at the moment and I don't have the patience. So I'm just going to use my fingers to really flatten along that seam. And I'll use some clips to help hold that flat as well. And then once I have that seam pressed flat, I'll press the whole pocket flat. And then I'll use clips along the top folded edge here to make that nice and straight. And now I'm going to go to the sewing machine, and on the top folded edge, not where the seam is, just the regular fold, I'm going to top stitch at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now use your pattern piece to mark placement on the bottom here on the sides for where this pocket goes. If you want to draw an entire line going across, you can. I just do little marks on the sides of the lining panel. And I'm going to take my slip pocket. I should use different colors, huh? But I'm going to take my slip pocket, and with the top stitched edge on the top, I'm going to line up that bottom edge with those marks. And I'm going to use clips to hold this down on the side. If you want to use some sort of a washi tape or paper tape to hold down the bottom edge, you can do that as well. I think I mismeasured this. All right, there we go. I marked the wrong spot on the left side here, so it needs to be a little bit higher up than where I originally put it. So we're just going to clip along the sides, and like I said, if you want to use tape to hold the bottom edge, you can, or you can just use clips on the sides. And now we can take this to the sewing machine, and we're going to top stitch along the sides and the bottom, all at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to hold this pocket in place. I'll be honest, I think I made my slip pocket too big. I mismeasured my slip pocket, and it's a little too tall. So if you're like, mine doesn't go up that high, it's not supposed to. I think I'll still be okay in the end, but looking at my original bag here, the slip pocket definitely comes down quite a bit further. So that's okay. I'm not going to do anything about it because it's not going to get in the seam. But just so you know, if yours looks different, it should. So now grab your 2 bottom accent panels, and on the wrong side, on the top edge, mark 1/2 of an inch down, and just use some sort of a fabric tool for that. And then right above that mark, we're going to place our double-sided tape. Essentially what we're doing is folding down the top edge by 1/4 of an inch. And so to do that, we mark 1/2 of an inch to make it easy. And you might notice that I did cut out the boxed bottoms on the bottom of these accent panels. In the pattern, I don't believe they do that at this point. They cut them out later. I just did it in the beginning because why not? Okay, so then remove the paper from the tape and fold that top edge back, wrong sides together so it meets that marked line, and just tape it down. And if you're using a thicker material, the tape might not hold it for very long, so you want to be quick with this. And you're going to do this for both bottom accents. Okay, if your tape isn't going to hold it for too long, you can definitely grab some clips here and just add a few clips, because we're not going to sew this on just yet. We got to do a couple more things before we sew this on. So I'm going to add clips just to keep it from getting untaped. All right, set these to the side for just a moment. Okay, so now we're going to work on the slip pocket and the strap. I'm going to take one of these away. So the pattern has placement marks for our straps, and so I just marked the exterior side of the straps on the top edge here. So when I put this down, the outside of the straps will line up with those marks on the top edge. And then I also marked the bottom corner for each strap. So how far down it's supposed to go, and also the same distance, just like that. But first what we want to do is we want to attach our slip pocket, and then we're going to put our straps over it. So you want to mark the midpoint on the top and the bottom of your slip pocket, and you might also want to use the midpoint on the top and bottom of your main panel here. And I know we didn't talk about the paper tape in the beginning, but this is where you're probably going to want that. So this bottom line here, this horizontal line here, that's the bottom of where the straps are going to come down. So I just extended that line all the way, and I marked a midpoint on that line, and I have a midpoint marked on the bottom edge of my slip pocket. So I didn't top stitch the sides and the bottom of this pocket. You probably should, it'll be a lot easier. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to match up that bottom midpoint mark, and I'm going to line up the midpoint mark on the top with the midpoint on the top of my exterior panel, and it should look just like this. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you do want it centered and not cockeyed. And then I'm gonna grab some of this paper tape and I'm just gonna tape this pocket in place. So now I'm gonna go to the sewing machine and I'm gonna baste along the sides and the bottom at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to hold this pocket in place to the exterior panel. All right, there we go. The nice thing about paper tape is that it's really easy to sew over it and then just peel it out of the seams. So now grab your strap and measure up from the bottom edge of each end of your strap 2 3/4 of an inch and mark on your strap. This is going to be a stitch line to help us in the next step. And then grab your double-sided tape and add some double-sided tape to the back of your strap behind where that marked line is and down to the edge. I'll be honest, sewing down straps in these slip pockets can be a little challenging, not because it's actually hard, it's just challenging to keep it all straight. So the more tape you use here, the better it's gonna turn out in the end. Okay, so I still have my little marks here. I have this like L-shaped marks here on the bottom corners outside of my slip pocket, and then I have the marks on the top. So starting with the left side, I'm gonna take the paper off the tape, and I'm gonna line up my strap corner, the outer left edge of my strap corner with that little bracket down there. And I'm just gonna tape it down. And I'm gonna make sure it also lines up on the outside edge with the top edge, right? Just like that. So it should cover the edge of your slip pocket. Now, my material I'm using for my slip pocket is pretty thick. So luckily it all still works, but these are very, very thin straps. So I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side where the outside corner of my strap matches up with that bracket. And I'm just gonna tape it down. And then I'm also gonna make sure the top edge lines up with the top mark on my main panel here. Okay, now we're gonna go to the sewing machine and we're gonna top stitch along the bottom edge of one side of the strap all the way up the side until we get to that marked line, top stitch over that marked line, and then top stitch again down the other side at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Do this for both ends of your strap. How stinking cute is that little pocket? That is so, so sweet. All right, so now you're just gonna repeat that with the other main panel and the strap, and if you wanna add another slip pocket to it, you can, but I'm not going to, and I'm just gonna do that off camera real quick. All right, there we go. There's the front panel, there's the back panel. Isn't that just the cutest little bag? Don't you want one of these in a full size? I know, yeah, we need to do that, don't we? Let's make a full-size version of this soon. All right, so now we're going to attach the bottom accents. So if you want to use double-sided tape here to help with this, you definitely can, or you can just line it up with the bottom edge. If you cut out the corners, you can line it up perfectly like I did. If you didn't, you don't have to. If you're going to leave the exterior full size, all the way down to the bottom, where it all matches up like this, then I would suggest that after you get done top stitching, you baste the sides down. However, I'm not gonna do that. Especially if you're using thick material, you don't need to do that. So I'm just going to attach these to both panels first. And now I'm gonna go to the sewing machine and I'm gonna top stitch along the top folded edge of each accent panel at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. Do this for both the front panel and the back panel. Okay, so now that I have the accent panel attached, I don't really need this extra layer of my exterior material. So that's the thing, you just don't need it. It's a lot of extra material, especially if you have a vinyl on the main panel and a vinyl for your accent. It's gonna get thick. So honestly, all I do is I just trim it down. Like I trim below the edge of the slip pocket and below the bottom of the strap ends, but I didn't feel like I needed all this extra material here. Now, if you're using lightweight material, then the bottom accent and the combination of that with the exterior is going to provide a little bit more structure, so I would leave it. But if you don't need that extra material, then just cut it off. Okay, you can set these to the side for just a moment. So now grab your zipper tape and your zipper tab, and I like to use some double-sided tape for this as well. So I'm going to add some double-sided tape just to the very back edge of my zipper tab, only on one of the long sides. And then on your zipper tape, you'll have an end that always stays closed. So when the zipper closes, it's moving towards the left. The right end should always stay closed. That's the end we're going to add the tab on. So I'm just going to take the paper off my tab. I'm going to kind of faux fold it in half, and then I'm just going to wrap it around the end of my zipper tape. And the sticky part, the tape part, where is that? The side that has the tape, that's going to go on the bottom of the zipper tape. Just like this. So just hug it around that edge. Make sure the long edges meet up on the back and the front. One side isn't lower down than the other. There we go. And now we'll go to the sewing machine and we can just top stitch along the raw edge of this zipper tab at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, so I am bringing out the pattern template for this. You can see I didn't cut it out. I've just been using measurements for everything, but I do like to have it printed out because it's easy for placement. So you'll notice on the pattern piece that you have zipper placement marks on the top edge. You're gonna line up the tab side with the zipper placement mark on the right, just like that. And then you're gonna go find the zipper placement mark over here on the left, and you're going to mark on your zipper, on the tape, where that is. So do this on both sides of your zipper tape. You could also just use a ruler here to measure where that is, but it is important that this zipper ends up this size. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna open up that end of the zipper tape, and this is the end that has the marks on it, and you can open up your zipper as much as you want. And so where that mark is, you're gonna pinch the zipper tape wrong sides together. And you notice when I pinch it like this, see how the coils just go up and away from the center? That's what I want. So I'm gonna take that pinch and I'm gonna fold it down over the zipper tape that's going behind it so that I get a nice 90-degree angle with my zipper. So I'm gonna add a little clip right here on the corner, and this is exactly how it should look. So I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. I'm gonna pinch right where that point is, let the zipper teeth go away, push that fold down over the zipper tape that's hiding behind it, and add a clip. There we go. So now I'm gonna take this to the sewing machine and I'm gonna baste along both little side edges here over that fold, over the teeth, to hold this fold in place. I'm gonna baste at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Use a zipper foot for this. Okay, now it's okay if it's a little sloppy as long as when you close the zipper, it comes up to the same spot, just like this, okay? If it's a little bit of a mess, that's okay, it's gonna be hidden anyways. I'm gonna trim down a bit of the overhang because there is quite a lot of it. And then as always, I'm going to use a lighter to melt down the edges of the fraying bit of the zipper tape. All right, so now we're gonna attach the zipper to the bag. And if you'd like to use double-sided tape like the pattern suggests, you definitely can. To be honest, my Bernina doesn't really love double-sided tape, so I'm not gonna use it, I'm just gonna baste it. So I went ahead and transferred those same zipper marks that were on the pattern piece that we just looked at. I went and transferred them to my exterior main front panel. And to add this zipper, we wanna make sure the handle stays out of the way, which is tricky because it's right up there. So you're gonna fold the handle down. So then laying the zipper right side down, I'm gonna match up the edge where the tab is with that right zipper mark. And I'm just going to start there and clip the zipper right sides together. So now I'm gonna take this to the sewing machine and I'm gonna baste along this clipped edge using a zipper foot at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to hold the zipper in place with the exterior panel. So once the zipper is basted in place, I'm gonna take the lining panel that does not have the slip pocket and I'm gonna lay that right side down over the back of the zipper. So my lining panel and exterior panels are right sides together and the zipper is in the middle, and just clip along that top edge, matching up the midpoints and the corners. Now we'll go to the sewing machine and we'll just sew along this entire top clipped edge at 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. So once that's sewn together, I like to cut the corners at just little 45-degree angles to reduce bulk in the later steps. And then you're going to press your lining up and away from the zipper, and then press the exterior and linings wrong sides together, lining up all their edges. And I like to use clips here. If you're using material that can be ironed, you can definitely take this to an iron and press that seam by the zipper nice and flat. Otherwise, use your fingers or a seam roller, whatever works. So I like to close the zipper all the way and just kind of pull on it to get it nice and straight. And now we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and we're gonna top stitch along this seam on the exterior panel, but only where the zipper is. So you're not gonna go all the way to the ends. You're gonna start and stop at the beginning and the end of your zipper tape. And I do suggest you backstitch at the beginning and the end. And I also like to leave the threads really long and pull them to the lining side and tie them into knots for extra security. Isn't that just the cutest little bag? Okay, now we're gonna repeat that with the other side. So grab your exterior back panel and lay it right side up, and take the strap and pull it down away from the seam. Make sure the other strap is also pulled down. If you ever want to use tape to hold these down, you can. You're gonna flip your zipper so it's right side down, and you can use the guide points on the pattern piece just like we did for the front panel, or you can just match up the exterior back panel with the exterior front panel on the sides. That's kind of what I do. I just look at the back and make sure it's all lined up, because that is more important. in the end is that the sides are lined up rather than the zipper being exactly a certain distance from the edge. It does need to be far away from the edge, but all right, so once I have it clipped in place, I'm just gonna look at the front as well and make sure, again, the sides are all lined up. Now I'm gonna go to the sewing machine and I'm gonna baste along this edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So once that's basted in place, I'm gonna grab my lining that has the slip pocket that's way too high. And I'm gonna lay my lining panel right side down so it's on the back side of that zipper, and I'm just gonna line it up with the corners and the midpoint of the exterior main panel and clip together. And now I'm going to sew along this top clipped edge at 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. Once again, I'm going to trim down these corners just a little bit, and then I'll press the lining away from the zipper and then flip this around and press the exterior and the lining, wrong sides together, and try to get that seam up at the top by the zipper nice and straight. So I always like to add a couple clips like to the side of the bag just to make sure everything is lined up correctly. I find that it helps me get that seam by the zipper straighter. And then I like to have the zipper fully closed while I just kind of tug on the material and press along that seam with my fingers. And then once it's nice and flat, I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and I'm going to top stitch right along the seam on the exterior side, right by the zipper at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, but only where the zipper tape is. And again, I'll back stitch and tie off my threads. This is turning out so stinking cute. I love this Ponte nylon. Okay, so now we're gonna finish up the bag. So I'm gonna do the birthing option because honestly, it's very simple. So we're gonna take both the exterior panels and we're gonna flip them right sides together and just tuck in those straps so you don't accidentally sew over them. And we're gonna line up all corners, all edges right sides together and start clipping together. We're going to sew around the entire exterior so you can clip everything without worrying that you'll forget to leave an opening. I would suggest you open up your zipper at least halfway and make sure that the accents, the top edges of each of the accents where it folds over, make sure those meet up as well. And then go all the way up to the seam between the exterior and the lining. Once again, make sure those seams line up, and you can push your zipper tab in either direction. You're going to poke it out later anyways, and you're not sewing over that zipper tab. So just push it so it gets out of the way and you can have a nice flat seam. And then we're going to clip along the edges of the lining as well, but you can leave the very bottom of the lining unclipped so you don't forget to mark an opening there. So just do the sides of the lining for now. All right, so on the bottom edge of your lining, you want to mark an opening, and I'm doing about 3 inches, which is kind of big, but anything smaller than that is going to be really difficult to turn this out, especially if you're using vinyl. So I'm going to do 3-inch opening here. And now we're going to sew this. So starting at one end of our opening, I'm going to start sewing at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. At that mark, make sure you backstitch well. As you get to each corner of the box corners, make sure you backstitch and then go over to the next corner and continue. So on the lining side, I'll continue at a 3/8 inch seam allowance until I get to the zipper. Once I get close to the zipper, I'm going to decrease to a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then on the exterior, I'm going to sew everywhere at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Again, backstitching at each one of these corners for the boxed corners, and then going over to the other edge of the zipper. Once I get back onto the lining side, I'm going to increase it to a 3/8 inch seam allowance until I get back to my other mark for my opening. I suggest using a zipper foot for this because you're going to need to get really close to the ends of your zipper tape, but you're not sewing over your zipper. You're not sewing over the zipper tab, and you're not sewing over the zipper teeth on the open side. You just want to get as close as you can to them. Take your time here, use a stiletto, and again, backstitch, backstitch, backstitch. Alrighty, you see what I'm saying? This hole is not very big, so if you're using thick material, it's going to be tricky. This is also why it was important that that glue dries on that pocket, because as we turn this back out, it's going to really put a lot of pressure on it. So let's start with boxing these corners now. On the exterior side, I do like to open the seams. I know it can be a little tricky depending on your material, and it is such a small corner, but just do your best to press the seams open. And I don't press the material along the entire seam open, only at the box corner. So I like to pull along the middle of the bag to really pull it apart. I feel like it makes it easier to flatten out that corner. And then once you get it flat and the seams open, I add a clip right at the seam to hold the seams open. Then I also add clips further down along this like triangle bit, and I feel like that helps a lot when I'm sewing it. So I'm going to do that with the other side as well. And feel like my straps are trying to pop out of these little corner holes. So I'm gonna shove them back in there. And I'm gonna go ahead and prep my lining corners while I'm here. Lining corners are a little bit easier. I don't spread the seams open. I just flip them in opposite directions. You'll notice the seams here are a little bit bigger, so it's just very easy to smush them in opposite directions. But once again, I'm gonna add clips along the main body as well to help keep it nice and flat. So do this for both of your lining corners. Now we're gonna go to the sewing machine and we're gonna stitch along all 4 box corners at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end each time. Alrighty, all the corners are boxed. And I gently pull out the bag through that hole. Like I said, I couldn't imagine doing the birthing option with really thick vinyl for like the exterior. I feel like that would be very challenging. All right, let's gently push everything out. This is where one of those turning wands comes in pretty handy because it's kind of like very strong finger, especially if your hands are getting a little tired from turning the bag out. Okay, and then where your zipper tab is, make sure you put your finger in and pop it out and smooth down those seams. If you feel like it's really bulky, you can get your finger in there and like push out the seam and smooth it down. Do this for both edges. Oh my gosh, this is so cute. Okay, so I'm just gonna push the lining in because I just wanna see it real quick. How stinking cute is this little teeny tiny tote? Isn't this so fun? Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, so I'm going to close up the lining now. Pull this out so we have the hole, and then flatten out that seam really well, and then just insert your fingers into the corners of that seam, and you'll notice the material naturally rolls down in on itself. That's what we want it to do. So we're just gonna clip along this edge. It should just have folded material right now. And then I'm gonna take my woven bag tag and I'm gonna insert that into that opening just like that. This is optional, but it's a fun little detail, you know, especially if you accumulate these things over time. It's fun to have. All right, so I'm gonna go to the sewing machine and I'm just gonna top stitch right along this clipped edge, closing that hole at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning and the end. Alrighty, and that's it. I'm just gonna tuck this in there and then really take the time to put the corners nice and firm. I'm gonna grab my wand for that. Just really poke out those corners, make it look nice and structured. How stinking cute. And you know what's nice about water resistant canvas or waterproof canvas is that it adds stabilizer. It adds like an interfacing almost feel to a bag without having to add the interfacing. Isn't this just the most adorable? Okay, one last thing. This is something you can do if you feel like it. I have these split key rings here. I do suggest you get ones that are not really hard to open, but you can actually weave on your straps. So you can do both straps onto this. So you see how both the straps are in the key ring now, and you can just hang this onto your purse, which is exactly what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put this on my tote bag. I'm going on a trip in a couple days and I'm gonna bring this with me. It is so stinking cute. I hope you love making these as much as I do, and yeah, let's all make 100 of them. Every time I make one, I love it even more. When I made this one, I was like, there's no way I could love a little teeny tote more than I love you. But then this one was made, and I love it even more. Look at that little tiny pocket there. You know what? And for those of you who are like, what would you use that pocket for? You know, they have like the grocery stores. I think it's Aldi or something. We're supposed to. I've never been to one, but apparently they have a quarter you're supposed to put in for a shopping cart. I don't know. People are always talking about little bags for their quarters. You can stick your little grocery quarter here. This is adorable. Look at that material, right? See how it pops? Isn't that wild? And so you can see I put my keychain on both of the little tote straps like this. So here, this is not handmade. This is a store-bought bag. This is from Stony Clover. And I'm actually about to leave to go on a little weekend getaway. And what I'm gonna do is I'm actually just gonna hook that onto there. And look how stinking cute that is. Let me pull this down. There we go. But look at that. Isn't that cute? It's an accessory for my accessory. It's a tote for my tote. And I'm obsessed. Absolutely obsessed. Oh my gosh, I love these little bags so much. So I hope you love making these little teeny bags as much as I do. If you make one using this tutorial, please make sure you tag OklaRoots Tuts. Make sure you're also tagging Carolina Little Stitches and all of your little teeny makes. If you are hoping for a full-size version of this pattern, please make sure you reach out to Carolina Little Stitches, because we are all encouraging her to do that, because I would love a full-size version of this that would match this bag exactly, because it is absolutely adorable. Thank you so much for sewing with me today. I hope you're having a great day. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Have a fantastic rest of your year too, I guess, since we're at the end of it. Get out there and make something. Bye, guys.